Hi, it's Zane Myers, and welcome again to another edition of the Trustcast Show. And we're really excited to have with us Jill Poser. Welcome to the show, Jill.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
Good morning. Today's guest started her career as a yarn dye stylist in the fashion industry, worked with brands like Levi's and Disney, and then pivoted into construction and there's a little bit more story in that, but before her parents' health crisis pulled her into the world of aging care. So quite a span of different things. Now Jill runs a nurse-led practice in South Florida that helps families navigate the hardest chapter of their loved ones' lives, something called aging life care management, and we'll get into what that means in a minute. Jill, you went from styling yarn for West Point Pepperell in 1980 to running a home renovation business to now leading nurse-led aging care practice. What was the moment that made you say, I need to completely change what I'm doing with my life?
So, I was the managing partner for a boutique showroom in Fort Lauderdale, and we did high-end kitchen and bath renovation. And during that time, the National Association of Home Builders was really promoting this certification called Aging in Place Specialist. And so that was to help people, with modification and all that to be able to stay in their homes safely. And there are lots of older adults in South Florida. I found the whole notion of this very compelling. I come from a big family. We've all learned how to, take care of our own. We'd like to say right to the greater good and understand, our responsibility and all that. So this really spoke to me on many levels, and that's how it began. And then I started to meet all these people in the older adult space, and I started to learn
So Jill,
about.
I made a mistake because I did not press my echo cancellation, and if I don't press it, I sometimes run the risk of ending up with something that's less than optimal in the recording. So I'm gonna have to. I need to stop, and then I'm going to ask you that first question again, and then because I need to stop and restart. So, Jill, you went from styling yarn for West Point Pepperell in 1980 to running a home renovation business to now leading a nurse-led aging care practice. What was the moment that made you say, I need to completely change what I'm doing with my life?
Great question, because the background sounds like it has nothing to do with what I do now. So I was the managing director for this small showroom in Fort Lauderdale, and we did very beautiful work in the high net worth space in kitchen and bath renovation. And during that time, the National Association of Home Builders was promoting this certification called Aging Life Care Specialist. So I was very taken by this, and I sat for the certification. And in that time, they added a whole part to it where you had to do sensitivity training. And I realized it was actually extraordinary because you got to experience what it was like to be older and to not, have the use of your eyes, to not have use of your hearing, to not even have use of your hands. And it was quite shocking, actually. And the ball started to roll from there. We had a general contractor's license, and so we were able to do very high level projects. And from that, I started to meet care managers. And in that time, I came to understand that there's this whole bigger sphere of people that take care of older adults. I was so taken with this. I found this to be so special and extraordinary. I come from a big family. We all learned to take care of our loved ones. And I just said, I want to do this. So I went back to school and I went to the University of Florida. They have a graduate certification in care management because I believe you have to be educated in what you do to do it. And so that's how it evolved. And since then, in 2012, when I went back to school, I've never looked back. And now this practice, which is Life Care Concierge of South Florida, as you said, is a nurse-led practice in in the older adult space for advocacy, and we take care of a lot of older adults. And I think we do extraordinary things for people, and I'm very proud of what we do. And since then, I'm certified 3 times in different forms of care management. And I take this work very seriously, and my team takes this work very seriously, and that's where I am today.
Okay, so for somebody who's never heard the term aging life care management, walk me through what happens when a family first calls you in a panic, and why are they in a panic?
Okay, so that's another good question. So, what is interesting about that, especially in today's day, there's a lot of conversation about proactivity and taking care of yourselves so that you're ahead of, disease, not behind disease. But the fact is, in terms of what happens in our practice, people don't call us in that regard. People call us when they are 7 minutes from a crisis, literally, or they are in crisis, something dramatic has happened. So it could be that your loved one has fallen multiple times, your loved one is not what they were, and all of a sudden you're noticing that they're repeating the same thing many times, that you've come to visit them and their house is not pristine the way it had been. They look messy, they've lost a lot of weight, they're not eating properly. It could be that somebody has developed Parkinson's disease, congestive heart failure, COPD at the same time, and the family just doesn't know what to do. They want to do the right thing, but they don't know what the right thing is. So those are some of the reasons that people call us. In terms of what does it mean to be an aging life care practice, the aging life care management practice, I should say, that we advocate for these types of clients. And what does that mean, particularly on the medical side, which a lot of this is, in the medical space. In the advocacy, we always start with an assessment, and the assessment teaches us a lot about that person, and it's comprehensive in nature. It gets into a lot of detail in around somebody's life and where they are in terms of their current medical status, their medical history, their activities of daily living, who their providers are. And we do 2 things that I find to be really important. We do a cognitive screen to learn where someone is in terms of executive function, or where somebody is in terms of what they
What's
do.
what do you mean by executive function? What is
Okay,
executive function?
so the things that you take for granted about your life, your decision making about how you take care of yourself. And oftentimes when somebody is at this place in their life, either they have so much anxiety, so they're not thinking clearly because they have so much anxiety about the changes, or the changes are such that they have some form of cognitive impairment, some form of dementia. They could have been diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease or another form of dementia, and they've lost the ability to reason about themselves, or they're starting to lose the ability about reasoning for themselves. So someone may need significant care. They may need help in the home setting, and they'll say, I don't need any of that. I'm fine. Someone could be on 12 medications, and you ask them, how do you feel about your health? And they'll say, oh, my health is great. I have nothing wrong with me. And then you discover they have a list of 10 things wrong with them. And like I said, they're taking 12 medications. So that's what I mean by executive function. What is your ability to really care for yourself? What is your ability to understand where you are in this space and time? So that's executive function. And another piece that we take a lot of pride in doing is that we talk to someone a lot about their life. And we call that a psychosocial background. And why that's important is because oftentimes when someone's life has changed so dramatically, they sort of feel canceled. They feel like people have sort of pushed them to the side, or they feel pushed to the side within themselves. And so when you get to learn about someone's life because you're creating a relationship with someone, it makes that person feel heard and listened to. And you get to learn things about someone that you wouldn't necessarily learn from their adult children, or they may see it in a different way.
Hmm.
And then, in that, we learn how to communicate with someone. We learn how they've thought about their life, their experiences, the things that they've accomplished in their life. And that becomes very relevant in taking care of them and the sensitivity you have toward them as an individual, as an adult, because even though their lives have changed so much, they are adults and they have to be treated with such a respect for the fact that they are adults. Does that make sense?
Sure. Your practice is fully nurse led with 24/7 coverage. Why does having nurses at the center change everything versus a typical home care agency?
So, two different things. Home care agencies, private duty home care agencies, are what I call the first line of defense. You're living in your home, whatever home means. You could be living in your home, you could be living in independent living, you could be living in assisted living. That becomes your home. And someone needs assistance with what are called activities of daily living, the things that we all take for granted about ourselves: dressing, bathing, the ability to walk, ability to transfer from one chair to another chair, the ability to go to the bathroom on your own. So those are the types of things, that the ability to prepare your own meals, to go food shopping. Those are a lot of the things that a a private duty home care aide, a caregiver, would help to take care of for you. The care manager, the nurse, is at a higher level than that. A nurse is, medically trained, clinically trained to understand what is happening for someone medically. They're able to exchange, I should say, with all different healthcare professionals. They're able to hear and understand what healthcare professionals say and have dialogue that makes sense to the different disease progressions somebody is experiencing. They're able to then communicate back to the family in a way that a family can understand it, a family can hear it, because they're not medically trained. And so at the first line of defense in terms of advocacy, that's what becomes so critical from a medical perspective. On the flip of that, okay, we do have other people on the team, because people are people, right? Or if you take care of people in a holistic, patient-centered manner, then you recognize that you're not just dealing with medical issues. You're also dealing with social ability, how people feel at this time in their lives. Many people feel isolated. They're not socializing in the way that they were. They're at home and they have AIDS, and their lives have changed so much that they're not at all able to do the things that they did before. So we also have on the team therapeutic recreation specialists put together programs for individuals that deal with supporting them with socialization, supporting them with cognitive activity. We train the trainer, if you will, which would mean that we would train the caregivers in the home, so that the therapeutic recreation specialist may come once a week, may come twice a week, but then you have all the rest of the days where you need that person to still have the support. So we create programs and activities that the caregivers can also provide to, their patients.
So
Their
let me see. I want to make sure that I'm understanding this
Okay.
completely. So your nurse-led practice is usually dealing with the medical issues that the person but is it totally separate from it's totally separate from the home care person who may be there in the home, may come on a regular basis to take care of them, to do basic functions in their life.
So,
How do the two work together, or do you provide both
okay. So
services?
so in that regard, they're separate, but they work together as well. So a caregiver's in the home, right? The caregiver needs what we call the scope of work. What are they doing to support their client at home? So typically, the nurse care manager will put together the scope of work. The nurse care manager puts together the caregiver team. The nurse care manager works with the caregivers to make sure they're implementing the activities of daily living support. Okay, the nurse care manager will transition the plan of care and change, upgrade the plan of care as people's needs grow. And so the caregiver and the care manager work in unison to make sure that they're taking care of their clients properly. At the end of the day, it really takes a village to take care of someone properly and make sure that in a united way, you are focusing specifically what we call a patient-centered approach to care. You're not the caregiver on your own. You're not the care manager on your own. You're working as a team.
So your service or your uh, um, yeah, your service, you provide a caregive man, care. What would you call them?
A nursing, a nurse care manager.
A nurse care manager who comes in and assesses the patient, assesses the situation, and then in essence prescribes a methodology to take care of that person. Would that be an accurate description?
Yes. So a nurse care manager also typically works with the client's primary care physician. Okay, the primary care physician is actively involved in the scope of work and what they also see as what their clients need. And the nurse care manager also reports back to the doctor so that the doctor is fully aware on a day-to-day, real time, in real time, what is going on in the home setting. So like I said, always a team approach, whether if there's a neurologist involved, if there's a pulmonologist involved, those doctors are fully aware of all the aspects that are happening in the home setting. And even with the therapeutic recreation, typically the nurse will look at the situation and the nurse will say, you know what, I think that the client can benefit from these types of services. So the nurse is typically the one that is bringing in our recreation therapy specialist into the plan of care. But with the caregivers, we will typically, unless a family has a caregiver in place, and even then, the caregiver would work with the care manager. It would not be silent. We provide the caregivers. We work very closely with a couple of agencies that we feel very trusting of, very safe with, very comfortable that they triage issues in a very, very detailed way. Okay, so that we don't have any concerns that if something goes wrong, as things go wrong, that they are able to jump in, they're able to support us with other caregivers if they need to. And so we work in unison with these two companies and it goes really well.
So if somebody calls up in a panic, and you're able to kind of say, let's take the bull by the horns and come in and figure out a comprehensive approach to take care of all these things that are going on with your mom or your dad or your sister, what have you, so that that they're taken care of. It's not just the doctor. It's not just one portion. You're taking a more holistic approach to the whole thing.
We call it a patient-centered approach to care. So that it's not the one thing, it's the total picture.
So in 2017, your father's health declined suddenly while your mother's dementia was progressing. So this is kind of personal. So what was it like being a professional who helps other families, but suddenly being the one who needs the help?
So that's an amazing question, actually. It's very different, similar but very different to be the one in the space where now your family unit is dramatically changing and you have to step in a different way. For a while, I was, because I do this for a living, I said, okay, I can manage all this for my parents. I'll put the caregiver team together. We'll make this to happen. And very shortly into that, I realized that my relationship with my parents was changing because I wasn't now any longer just their daughter, right? I was really starting to oversee their lives in certain respects. And it was very uncomfortable. It was actually very painful. First of all, they're adults. Second of all, they were married 100 years. They are the original marriage, and they were entitled to be a married couple, right? And even though things were changing, they were entitled to still make choices for themselves. Because at the beginning, my mom, even though she was showing signs of dementia, she still was capable of some decision making. And so what I realized very, quickly into it is that we needed to have our own nurse care manager to help me to be on the front line. I knew everything that was going on. We would communicate about their needs, but it was her having that relationship with them feeling that they were in control of their lives. I got to go back to being their daughter and, sharing time with them that was about being a family. And so that was a huge change in the dynamic and how we operated within a family unit. And I was so grateful because we were back to being our family unit and we're a close family. My brother, was also involved, very involved, and we were both struggling with this.
Mhm.
And we missed our parents, if you will. So that was part of our evolution. But then things got more complicated, and my mother's dementia, really started to accelerate and very quickly. And in certain ways, her care was more intense than my dad's care. His was physical, not to say it was easy, but he had full use of his brain, full use of executive function. I was explaining to you before. My mother didn't. And it was very painful for all of us to start to see that my mother, in many ways, was fading away. And to watch the sorrow for my dad, that his life partner, the love of his life, was not anywhere near what she was. And so it was hard. It's really been hard, actually. And in a
So,
way, it's helped me to practice differently because as much as you have, you're trained, you go to school, you're certified, until you walk in the shoes, you don't understand it in the way others genuinely feel it. And so in communicating with families, when I would, initially do an intake and talk to them, I'm able to share some of what's happened in our family. And so they get that I get it in a different way than just being the professional.
so you also use the term filial maturity. Can you explain what that means and why it matters for adult children caring for aging parents?
Yes, I happen to love the concept of filial maturity and
Filial.
filial.
Filial. Yeah,
Yeah,
okay. Yeah,
and I
explain that to me.
okay, and I first learned about that when I originally was in school at the University of Florida. So filial maturity, which resonated for me as someone who grew up in a family that you rise to the greater good to take care of your family members. And in filial maturity, it talks about you, you are not the parent to your parent. You honor where your parent is in that space, okay? And you support your parent in their changing care needs. And in a healthy family relationship, adult children are able to more easily glide into that. They accept that they are not the parent to their parent. They accept that they are the adult child, as I said, and they are supporting their parent as needs change. On the flip of that, if it's not such a healthy family, then there's way more conflict, and you hear things like, "Ugh, now I have more children to take care of. This is too much for me. I am so overwhelmed." Okay, in a healthy family, you could be overwhelmed. You could feel like there's so much to do, but you don't see your parent as your child. As I said, you see your parent as an adult. Okay, you see your parent as your parent, but you have more to do for them, but you're not taking over in the same way your parents took care of you when you were younger. That's not the dynamic.
So, what's the one thing your own caregiving experience taught you that no certification ever could?
Okay, so I'm going to cry when I say this to love unconditionally without any expectation. So, as my parents' needs have changed, particularly my mom's, my mom and my relationship is not, in some ways I said goodbye to my mother a long time ago. And to be able to love her, genuinely love her, without expecting anything of her is an extraordinary experience to go through and has meant the most to me in anything that I've dealt with my parents.
So, how did going through that with your parents change how your team shows up for families today? Or did you somehow, were you able to have that rub off?
Yes, I think that, yes, that, and then there's another factor. It's not easy to do this work, and not every nurse can do it. Many nurses are better at the bedside, if you will. Someone's in the hospital, they're taking care of them in the hospital, their patient loves them, thinks they're doing remarkable things for them, but I call it then a one and done. The person's in the hospital for X number of days, and then that person leaves, and you don't see them anymore. This is an ongoing relationship. And so you become close to that person. You identify with that person in a different way than you do with the average person that you meet. And so there's a sensitivity that goes along with that. Plus we have care team meetings every 6 weeks. We talk about our clients all the time and how we support them. And so they all know what I've been through with my parents. So the dialogues that we have are extremely sensitive and well thought out, in terms of how we are supporting families emotionally so that they also feel like they're being taken care of. It's not just your parent or your husband or your wife that you're taking care of. How does it also feel for you as the one having to step into that role? And your life has now dramatically changed, right? Your husband is not your husband in the same way. As I said, my mom was not my mom in the same way. My dad, even though it was physical, wasn't my dad in the same way. Okay. And so we have to support that, that side as well. And so there's a lot of dialogue all the time around those issues.
Okay, so I have some rapid fire, which I kind of lighten up a little bit. So, just to kind of in the middle here. So, I'm going to throw these at you. Hardest certification you earned?
The first one, because I went back to school and then I had to sit for my first test in order to become a certified care manager. After that, it was easier because I already was in the professional space. But the first one I felt was daunting. Like, please, please, please let me pass this certification examination, of which I did.
First, first job you ever had?
Oh, the first job I ever had was, okay, when I was in high school and I worked for Wendy's.
Okay. One thing every adult child should do for their parents before a crisis hits.
Okay, so I call that the theory versus the reality. The theory is that there should be family conversation about, what their parents want as they're getting older. You know, there should be a conversation, a financial conversation, so that, children understand where all their documents are, who's their financial advisor, have access to all this. So in the event something is to happen, they are already sort of involved, in their lives that way. Do those conversations always go on? They do not. There's a lot of sometimes there's a lot of push and pull around that, and it
Hmm.
doesn't all come out until the issues arise.
Fashion or scrubs? Do you ever wear scrubs?
No,
Okay,
fashion.
that one's. I was thinking it as I had that one down. Most underrated thing about South Florida for aging in place.
Say that one more time.
Most underrated thing about South Florida for aging in place.
Okay, so when people come here, most of the time adults come here because they are looking to relocate to, could be their second home, this could even be their third home, and they are coming here to have fun. And they're coming here to have a more simple life. Okay, so let's say they'll buy into a 55 plus community and everybody's excited about the activities that they're going to have at the clubhouse and meeting new people and making friends, but they're not thinking about what's happening, what could happen in their home. So there's no concept of modification for aging in place. None. Okay, until all of a sudden things change, and then in rapid fire you have to deal with all these modifications and changes, and it's pretty shocking actually
I
for
can see
people.
how that can happen. Absolutely
Yes.
can see how that can happen. Maya Angelou or another quote you live by.
Oh, okay. My favorite. I mean, yes, there are others, but my favorite is that quote. People will not remember, what you said. People remember how you made them feel. And that is 100% the work that we do, the space that we're in. I think that is the most meaningful of all the quotations that I know.
When a family does get a dementia diagnosis, what's the most common mistake that they make?
Um, Okay, that's a good question. The most common mistake that they make is that they sort of initially will minimize that sometimes it's not as bad as what they think it is. My mom is only a little bit confused. She can still do all these things. They will let continue to go along with the fact that their parent is driving and they need less care than what they think they need. Now, sometimes they're spot on, but many times they just sort of live in this, I don't want to say whirlwind of a space, but sort of like this uncharted space where they're not getting how much care their parent really needs.
So you've spoken at Alzheimer's Association events and co-founded a charity gala for them. What do you wish more people understood about dementia care?
Well, one, it's not mental illness, right? It has to do with brain function, and that's very different than mental illness. And so that's one thing I would like people to understand. And I would like people to also understand that someone with dementia is still a person, still has feelings, okay, and for a period of time still sees themselves and recognizes themselves as an adult. And I feel like everybody needs to take that in supporting the person with dementia.
So you have nurses, care managers, recreational therapists. How do you find people to fill those roles that can handle the emotional weight of this kind of work where you have somebody who you come in one day and they're just not the same as they were the last week and you've developed this relationship with this person over a period of time and just suddenly things start to change dramatically. How do you find people who can handle that?
So, well, in general, the way we have put the team together is that this one knows this one knows this one. And so, in general, it supports everybody that's on the team relates to the way I practice. And so, like energy attracts to like energy. And so, we have found everyone, as I said, this one knows this one knows this one. And the team has grown, and some of them have worked together in other positions. And so, it's grown to be a really strong team.
Um, you've described your practice as a place where clients are truly seen and heard. What does it take to create that in an industry that often treats seniors as problems to solve?
You ask a lot of very good questions, actually. So, okay, so that's part of why we have a practice, and that's why this has grown so dramatically. The healthcare arena is difficult, and because we're in an ongoing relationship with that person, it's easier, one on one to be a listener. It's easier to engage, right? So when someone feels that you are listening to them, that it makes it easier to be in the overall space where they need care, right? So they'll allow you to go to a doctor appointment, they'll allow you to be in the hospital with them, um, without feeling like you're invading their space, if that makes sense.
So what does the future of aging in place look like over the next 10 years? Not necessarily just you, but in general, what do you see?
Well, most people want to live at home as long as they can, but there's there's the haves and the have-nots. And so, the people that can afford, okay, will continue to be able to afford. This space where they can afford, as much as they need to age in place, there need to be more programs really to be able to support those who can support themselves as well. But that's complicated because, in Florida, the way programs are set up, the way the tax structure is set up, there's not enough, of that type of funding to be able to create those types of programs. So potentially you could have more community settings where you have in other parts of the country rather, where they're almost like communes where people live together and support each other. There are um, there are more services of people coming into the home setting and supporting people like mobile practitioners who are coming into the home setting to support, people who live in their home or wherever home is. And so they're not having to be out, with healthcare providers as much as they would have been in years past. And there is a shortage of caregivers, actually, and it's not easy to be a caregiver. Okay, and so that space is morphing, and to some degree, I can't say that I know what I see about that yet. It's still sort of early for me to have a genuine opinion about that, but that space is really changing as well. And so, how will that be filled? How will people be taken care of as it relates to caregivers? I'm not yet 100% on that.
So what do you see with your business in the next 5 years? Are you wanting to grow your business, and how difficult is it for you to get new clients into your business? I mean, just as far as a steady flow of new, I don't know, do you call them clients or you call them patients or
We call
you
them
call them
clients. We don't call
clients?
them patients.
Okay, I think that's probably more appropriate for what we're talking about. Just didn't want to misname.
That's
So
okay.
how do you get new clients, and is that a difficult task in and of itself?
So we get clients by referrals. We get clients by word of mouth. We get clients because, I may know someone or someone on the team may know someone. And so, we invite them into being into the practice and being our client. We get a lot of referrals from concierge doctors and from other professionals in, the arena. And so I don't necessarily find it hard for us to get clients. We focus on a certain type of client, and we've stayed true to how we practice. And so we wind up attracting, you know, clients that believe in service, expect service, and that's the mission and the energy we provide. Sometimes, it ebbs and flows. Sometimes the referrals are coming fast and furiously. Other times it's a little bit quieter. And to this day, I never understand how that happens and why, but that does happen. We are planning, we continue to grow, and there's so much need. And so, the goal is to keep building on a nurse-led practice on the medical side, to be able to develop more programs and more specialties that help people in the home setting. So therapeutic recreation. We also added something too, which we believe in ethical wills. And ethical wills are a lot about you leaving what you want to share with your family, okay, like your legacy. It can come in the form of a document, it could come in the form of a video, it could come in the form of some audio, okay? And so we have somebody on the team that works with our clients to sort of get them to talk about their legacy. And we have, very curated questions. And some people are very happy to be on video, and some people won't be on video. They only, they want to write what they have to say. And
Hmm.
so that's become meaningful. And that's another place where people feel like our clients feel like they're really heard. And then this is all given to their family members. And there are things that people learn from all that information that they've never known about their parents. It's really quite amazing. So it's more things to support people as they're aging, and making them feel comfortable, not just in a medical perspective, but about their lives, the whole other side of their lives that was their life for so many years.
So, Jill, where can people find you, learn more about Life Care Concierge? What's the best way if they're in South Florida, or even if they just want to talk to you about their situation? I don't know if you do that kind of thing, but if they want to get in touch, they need some help. What's the best way to get in touch with you?
Okay, so as I said, this one knows this one knows this one. We have an office number. We have cell phone numbers. We have we have our website, and so it's www.lifecareconcierge-sfl.com. And so we publish a lot as well, and so we provide articles to concierge doctors that they leave them on side tables so that people can pick up the articles, and we do our best to educate in these articles. We send them out to family members who send them out to friends, and so varied ways that people start to know about us, and and come to us. You have to be out there, educating, right? More and more and more, so that people learn about what we do, because I always think care management is the best kept secret. Like you asked, what is care management? I don't know what that is. A lot of people don't, okay, until they use the service. And then you'll hear things like, how did I live without this? This is so amazing. So it's a lot about education in so many different arenas that impact people as their family members age and their life
Well,
change.
well, thanks for coming on the show.